Isaiah chapter 8, verse 19, and I'll be reading through to verse 7 of chapter 9. And when they say to you, seek those who are mediums and wizards, who whisper and mutter, should not the people seek their gods? Should they seek the dead on behalf of the living? To the law and to the testimony. If they do not speak according to this word, it is because there is no light in them. They will pass through it, hard pressed and hungry. And it shall happen, when they are hungry, that they will be enraged, and curse their king and their gods, and look upwards. Then they will look to the earth, and see trouble, and darkness, gloom of anguish, and they will be driven into darkness. Nevertheless, the gloom will not be upon her who is distressed, as when at first he lightly esteemed the land of Zebulun and the land of Naphtali, and afterwards more heavily oppressed her by the way of the sea beyond the Jordan, in Galilee of the Gentiles. The people who walked in darkness had seen a great light. Those who dwelt in the shadow, the land of the shadow of death, upon them a light has shined. You have multiplied the nation and increased its joy. They rejoice before you according to the joy of harvest, as men rejoice when they divide the spoil. For you have broken the yoke of his burden, and the staff of his shoulder, the rod of his oppressor, as in the day of Midian. For every warrior's sandal from the noisy battle, and garments rolled in blood will be used for burning as fuel of fire. For unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, and the government will be upon his shoulders, and his name will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Of the increase of his government and peace there will be no end, upon the throne of David and over his kingdom, to order it and to establish it with judgment and justice from that time forwards, even forever. The zeal of the Lord of hosts will perform this. Amen. Now there's about 10 sermons or more, maybe 100 in this chapter. I want to draw your attention to verse 2, particularly this morning. The people who walked in darkness have seen a great light. Those who dwelt in the land of the shadow of death, upon them has a light shined. What makes you think Christmas is near? Is it the John Lewis advert? Is it the Coca-Cola advert? I know for a lot of people that's often the first thing that tells you Christmas is near. Maybe it's the displays in the shops that are getting earlier and earlier. I mean, when was it we saw? Was it September? There was shops. Didn't you see it earlier than September? Wouldn't surprise me. To be honest, the way things are going, we might as well have Christmas all year round. But you know what? The way it should be. We don't need one day, do we, to remember Jesus' birth? For me, what makes me know Christmas is certainly near, it is the Christmas lights. It is walking down the high street in the night time and seeing the beautiful lights. It is seeing the lights outside of people's houses. Because we all like lights, don't we? We all like lights. It's quite commonly said that no one really likes the winter too much. If you do like the winter, then you're a bit unusual. I like the fresh air of winter, but generally speaking, the days are shorter, aren't they? It's statistically been proven that depression is more common in the winter because there's less light around, and light is often good for our emotions and our feelings, and we get a good vitamin D. Because darkness, genuinely speaking, is not a good thing, is it? Imagine a world where there was no light. Imagine our world where there was no light. I mean, we need light to function, don't we? Imagine trying to do anything in your house, ironing your clothes, dusting your furniture, reading a book without light. In fact, when God judged the people of Egypt in Exodus chapter 10, we read something quite profound. Because I don't know about you, when you think of plagues, you genuinely don't think of darkness, do you? I mean, you think of disease, you think of all sorts of things like that. And yet we read that one of the plagues God sent in Egypt was a plague of darkness. Moses stretched out his hand toward the heavens, and there was a thick darkness in all the land of Egypt for 3 days. But all the children of Israel, they had light in their dwellings. And we're told that the people of Egypt, they didn't leave their beds for 3 days. Totally paralysed in darkness. You can't live in darkness. Can you? I mean, maybe you've experienced that feeling of being in tangible darkness. It's paralysing, isn't it? You don't know if you take a step, or you fall down a hole, or you fall down a ditch. You don't know what's around you. You don't know who's near you. I can remember when I was younger being the last person up the stairs at night time, and I had the job of turning all the lights off. And you turn all the lights off, and also you were struck by the darkness. And I would leg it up the stairs, because I don't know what's under the piano in the darkness. Darkness causes fear, it causes anxiety, it paralyses us. Imagine walking around a glorious gallery, art gallery, in darkness. You couldn't appreciate any of the beauty, could you? You'd be ignorant. Imagine going to see the Grand Canyon, you turn up and it's dark. I mean, you might be amazed at the wonderful sky with the stars, but other than that, you're going to miss all the beauty of the canyon. And I think there's a reason why we love light. And there's a reason why, generally speaking, we dislike darkness. And Christmas time, particularly with all the lights out there, it drives this message home to us. And it's this, that the various lights remind us that there is a difference between light and darkness. And light and the displays of light point us to our longing for light to shine into darkness. Because firstly, what this passage teaches us, particularly in verse 2, is that the world is, by nature, a dark place. Firstly, the world is in darkness. What do I mean by that? Well, the world's an evil place, isn't it? I mean, look around. Turn on the news. What do we see? Suffering, greed, war, slavery, injustice, corruption, lying. I think everyone, even non-Christians, would unanimously agree that this world isn't a wonderful place. Maybe some of you have been watching Planet Earth recently. I love Planet Earth. And in one sense, you're in awe of God's creation, because in one sense, you see all the variety and the creativity. But right in the midst of this is just great wickedness and suffering and death. You see this little turtle when he's hatched out of his shell, and he gets 2 yards up the road and there's a snake after him. The world is a dark place, and we see that all around. I was recently in a pub with a friend, and we were just discussing a few things, and I could overhear a discussion behind me, 2 women. It was just after the Paris attacks, and the conversation that they were having, I don't believe they were Christians, I don't know, went something along like this. It went, can you believe people could commit such acts of evil? I worry about the world my children are growing up in. People see the evil around them. They see the darkness around them. It is real and it is felt. But the question is, whilst people recognise the evil, why is it they don't want to consider the reason why there is evil? It's one thing to acknowledge the presence of evil, but it's another thing to say, well, why is it there? Why is it here? And the Bible gives us the simple answer. We haven't got time to survey the detail. But the bottom line of it is that the world is in evil, and it lies in the hands of the evil one because it has rejected God. Because to oppose God, who is good, is to do evil. Evil is anything that opposes God, because God is good. And so to do the opposite of God, to go against God, is to do evil. It's not rocket science. And this is what happened, isn't it, to the people of Israel? We read in verses 21 to 22, they rejected God, they cursed their God, they looked upward, they cursed him. And what did they get when they cursed the one who is good, the one who is life, the one who is joy? They got trouble, darkness, gloom of anguish, and they were driven into darkness. Some translations say thick darkness. Thick darkness. You reject God, and you will be plunged into darkness. If you reject the one who is life himself, you will get a life without the life and blessing and fullness of joy that is in Almighty God. So the world's an evil place. That's why it's dark. But there's another reason why the world is in darkness. It's because of spiritual ignorance. Look at verse 2. The people who walked in darkness. It's not often I have to say the NIV did a good job, but I like the NIV in this particular verse because it says the people walking in darkness. It captures the ongoing, present, continuous tense of the verse, of the Hebrew. In other words, people are ongoingly walking in darkness. What does it mean to walk in darkness, you might ask? Well, Ephesians 5 tells us quite clearly, doesn't it? It's to act contrary to God's ways. It's sexual morality. It's covetousness. It's crude joking. It's foolish talk. It's lying. It's cheating. It's greed. It's abuse. It's violence. It's murder. That's the reason why the world is in darkness. Because people walk in darkness. They live in darkness. They live in sin. And they're in its works of darkness because it's contrary to the God who is light. What does 1 John tell us? God is light, and in him is no darkness at all. The Lord is righteous in all his ways and kind in all his works. And so to reject God, brothers and sisters, is to reject the only one who can solve the problem of our lives. And it is to plunge into a deep and thick darkness and to lose spiritual light to guide us. Maybe you've been to Chiselhurst Caves. Hand up if you've been to Chiselhurst Caves. I hope you didn't get lost from your tour guide. Imagine you're in the cave and someone's shining a torch. You're a bit lost and they're quite away from you, but you can see the torch shining and they're saying, follow the light. Follow the torch, the light of the torch, and they're shouting to you and you will find your way out. But what would happen if you said, you know what, I can do this myself, according to my own light. I don't need your light. And they turn and go their own way. You would plunge into deeper and thicker darkness. And you would go more and further away from the only one who can deliver you from the darkness. And you may bump your head. You may fall into a hole. You may meet someone quite nasty. I don't know. But that's what happens when you walk away from light, the light that guides, the one who is light. And when we look out on our world, maybe this is you this morning, maybe it's not, but maybe it was you this morning, it was you. You know what it's like, don't you, to live your life ignorant of God. It just makes a mess of life, doesn't it? An absolute mess. And you would think, wouldn't you, that people seeing this would look to God. Would look to the God who is life, who is light, who is joy. Do they? What did the people do in verse 21? What did the Israelites do when they were in darkness? They cursed their king and their God. It's this type of attitude which is prevalent in our society now. We know the world's a bad place. We know it's not nice. I see the evil around. Who does God think he is? It's that type of attitude which caused Richard Dawkins to write his book, The God Delusion. It's that type of attitude which caused Stephen Fry to have a right rant, if you've ever seen that. Breaks your heart. But we shouldn't be surprised, because to walk away from God in the first place is the sin of pride, isn't it? It's saying, I don't need God, I can go my own way. So why would we expect people who have walked away in the first place to admit that they need God? Rather, they will blame God. And this is what we're seeing in society. So, what do people do? What do you do in darkness? What does our country do? What does our government do in darkness? Well, they look to the earth. Verse 22. Then they will look to the earth. This is what Isaiah's generation did. Surrounded by threats of danger, surrounded in famine and darkness and in difficulty and in spiritual rebellion, walking in darkness, they look to themselves to solve the problems. And this is what our country, this is what our world is doing even now. you'll probably see something along the lines of this in various speeches that are made by significant people in our land. But if you look to yourself, you will only plunge yourself into more darkness, because you're already in darkness. Tim Keller is really helpful on this. He says, these people here and all people everywhere are looking to human resources to fix the world. They are looking to their experts, to the mystics, to the scholars for solutions. Yes, they say, we are in darkness, but we can overcome this darkness ourselves. Maybe this is you this morning. You think that you can overcome the darkness of your life yourself. It's the attitude of Theresa May, our Prime Minister. I'm not trying to knock her, but it's just quoting something that was said of her. It's been well documented in the news in recent months that slavery is still a problem in our world. There is still a lot of slaves in the world today, sadly. And the British government, seeing this, Theresa May said, Britain will lead the fight against modern slavery and will make it our mission to help rid the world of this barbaric evil. Really, Theresa May? You think that the British government can rid the world of the moral evil of slavery? Wow, you're doomed to fail before you even start. Because why is there slavery? Because of the human heart. Because people are so wicked in their hearts that they don't care about lives if it makes them money. Has looking to the earth, has looking to ourselves to solve the darkness of the world worked? Consider the last 100 years, a century gone by. We had 2 world wars. We had genocide. We've had countless death, civil wars. And ironically, religion gets always blamed for the causes of war in the world. The irony of it is, genocide, particularly like in Russia, was caused by atheists. It's a dark world. Or think of the social experiment our society is still undergoing. It began in the 60s, it's ongoing. The sexual revolution. Let's liberate women. And by the way, some of that stuff is good. Not all of it's bad, equal pay, all these things. I'm all for and pro that. But nevertheless, there's been this great social experiment to basically to get rid of gender distinctions. We've seen this in society. Has it caused more harmonious family life? Has it caused happier children? Has it led to women feeling happier? Has it led to men being happier? No. In fact, we're seeing more family breakdown than we ever have seen before in the so-called days when things were more oppressive. We're seeing more miserable children. We're seeing more abortion than at any time before. We're seeing family breakdown. So when people look to themselves to get out of darkness, it doesn't solve the problem, does it? Oh, right, look to science. Let's look to science. Well, if you look to science to solve your problems, what does science tell you? It tells you you are nothing but an animal. You're just like the rest of them. So why should you be surprised then when people murder innocent babies and there's a lack of respect for life? Looking to the earth will not solve our problems. And so secondly, there is a need for light. I hope you're seeing this. There is a desperate need for light in this dark and evil and spiritually ignorant world. We've already considered that we need light to function in the world, but consider also the fact that light gives life. What would the world be like without the sun? Would you have any plants growing? Would you have any trees growing? I believe the Bible tells us, doesn't it, that God has declared his glory in creation. And in creation, we are taught something about what God does. And there is a sense in which, even in the sun being put where it is, and the whole of the earth relying on the sun for life and warmth and guidance, is to be a picture of the fact that ultimately we need the God who made the sun to be our light, to give us life, to guide our way, to show us the path. What does John 1 tell us? He who is the light is the life of all men. We live and move and have our being in God. You need God to stay alive, just as the whole of earth needs the sun for its continued existence. Jonathan Edwards, a famous preacher, said something very profound along this line about how we need God. He said, at this very moment, you are held up alive by God as one holds a spider or a loathsome insect over the fire which he could drop at any moment. So we need the God who gives life. Maybe you remember when you were at school, I can remember doing that experiment where you put different plants in different places. You put one in the cupboards, you put one in the playgrounds, you put one on the table, one under the table, one on the teacher's desk, and then you go, I wonder what plant's going to grow the most. What plant will survive the next week? And every day the kids, they all take their check. What plant shriveled up the most and died in seconds exaggeration, but quite quickly? The one in the cupboards. Because it's shut off in darkness, in light. And that is why our world is decaying and dying. Because it has separated itself from the one who gives light and life to all men. But light also gives us truth, doesn't it? Imagine you're cycling up a mountain in darkness. And the other side of that path is a big drop. Without light, you're gonna just potentially come off the cliff, aren't you? But when the light comes up, you can see everything around you. You can see things as they really are, and you know the way you are to go and to be safe. And God, being a God of truth, reveals reality as it really is, and shows you reality, and guides you, and keeps you. Secondly, light shows us beauty, doesn't it? We see all the beauty around us. That's what's great about the summer, is we can enjoy creation for that little bit longer. We have those barbecues late into the evening. We go to the seaside. We go to the wonderful gardens, and we see light reveals all that is around us. But remember that was all made by the God who is beauty itself. And people today, and maybe this is you, if you spend your life trying to find fulfillment in people and in boyfriends and in girlfriends and in careers, you're like the person who settles for a photo of a glorious scenery, refusing tickets to see the scenery in reality. Because they don't compare to the one who is the creator and made all these things. And you will never be satisfied. So we need light. We need light to come into this world, to show us the truth, to show us true beauty, show us reality as it is, and to dispel the darkness of our spiritual ignorance. And what's glorious is, thirdly and lastly, the light has come. The light has come. The people who walked in darkness, or the people who are walking in darkness, have seen a great light. Those who dwelt in the land of the shadow of death, upon them a light has come. What's amazing is, Isaiah is writing this way before Jesus even came, and he's writing as it's already fulfilled. The people walking in darkness have seen a great light. Happened. In fact, we picked this up, wouldn't we, in Matthew chapter 4, verse 16. And we see the fulfillment of this. And leaving Nazareth, Jesus came and dwelt in Capernaum, which is by the sea, in the regions of Zebulun and Naphtali, that it might be fulfilled, which was spoken by Isaiah the prophet, saying, the land of Zebulun and the land of Naphtali, by the way of the sea, beyond the Jordan, Galilee of the Gentiles. The people who sat in darkness, got the idea of dwelling in darkness, living in darkness, have seen a great light. And upon those who sat in the region of the shadow of death, light has dawned. Praise God. How did that light come? Verse 6 of Isaiah 9 tells us, for unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given. Who is this son? He's a ruler. He's a wonderful counselor. He instructs us how we should live, how we should go, points us to our need and the way of salvation. He's the everlasting Father. He's always been God's. He's the Prince of Peace. He's the one who brings peace with God and peace with one another. And he's the one who will rule forever on the throne of David. John 1 verses 4 and 5 says, Jesus was the life-giving light that has shone into the darkness of this world. How could it be that the mighty God, who is light himself, would shine into this dark world by giving his Son? I don't know about you, if I'm the man at the top of that cave shining my torch and I'm saying, hey Jim, come on, I'm shining the light. And he says, no, I'm going my own way. I'll be like, well, stuff you then. Oh, you want to go your own way? Go your own way, see how well it goes. How would it be that Jesus, the light of the world, has come into this world to save a people who have refused him and rejected him and gone each their own way? It's amazing. God would be perfectly just to give us what we choose, a life of suffering, no hope, confusion, darkness, trouble, turmoil. It's our fault, it's our sin. And yet God has come. He came to guide us as we see. He came to show us truth. He came to show us beauty. He shows us beauty because through Jesus Christ he shows himself to be merciful, caring, compassionate and loving. See how he deals with the outsiders. See how he deals with the needy, with the vulnerable. He exposes our darkness. What does this idea of light shining in darkness remind you of? Where does it take you back to in the Bible? It takes you back to Genesis chapter 1, doesn't it? Darkness was over the face of the earth. And God said, let there be light. And there was light. What's being referred to here is a work of recreation. Light shining to give new hearts, to change people, recreate people, to be a new creation. Because this is the only answer for our world. When people are good, they will do what is good, and only then. But when people are sinners and evil at heart, they will only do what is evil and sinful at heart. When people are bad, they will do bad things. There needs to be a heart change. And this is what the light came to give. And we see this idea developed, don't we, by Paul in 2 Corinthians 4, where he says, for God who said, let light shine out of darkness, has shone into our hearts to give the light of the knowledge of the glory of God in the face of Jesus Christ. Light dawns in the believer, giving new life, new desires, new attitudes, new interests, new passions and love, new appreciation for what true beauty is. No longer a love for the world, but a love for God. And in Jesus Christ they see what wisdom is, what love is, what patience is, what kindness is, what mercy is, what justice is, what compassion is, what goodness is, and what truth really is. And what's the result of receiving this light? Well, we read it in verses 3, don't we? You have multiplied the nation and increased its joy. There's deliverance in verse 4. Deliverance from the bondage of sin. This is what God has done. And it should amaze us. Because for us to be brought into the light, Christ had to live in the darkness. This is why we remember Christmas Day. We remember the day he was born because he had to die. Mark preached so clearly last week. He came to save his people from their sins. This is why he came. He came down so we could go up. Jesus went into the deepest darkness we can imagine, the darkness of death itself, to save us. Greater love has no one than this, than to lay down one's life for his friends. What did Jesus experience on the cross? Darkness, trouble. He took responsibility for our crimes and bore them on the cross. My soul is very sorrowful, says Jesus, even unto death. Jesus, the light of the world, experiences darkness, sorrow, pain, rejection, suffering, loneliness, hostility, that he might give us true joy, everlasting life, true beauty, and truth that will change us and guide us. Has this light dawned in your heart? Could you say this Christmas, in all the opening of all the presents and the fun that involves, that you have experienced the light of life shine into your heart, giving you a knowledge of the person of Christ? There's nothing that compares. Nothing that compares. And it gives you hope in this world, of the better world yet to come. The question is, why would you refuse this light? This is where I want to close. Why would you refuse this light? John 3, which we read earlier, tells us why we might refuse this light and why you might be refusing this light and have been refusing this light for a long time. And this is the judgment. The light has come into the world, and the people love darkness rather than light, because their works were evil. For everyone who does wicked things hates the light, and does not come to the light, lest his works should be exposed. You see, a person will only come to the light if they actually want to see things as they really are. I can remember as a kid, if I'd mess up my bedroom, when my dad was about to come in and turn the light on in the morning, I'd go, no! Because he's going to see things as they really are. And I'm going to be in trouble, because he tidied up those crates earlier. This is why people don't naturally want to come to church. This is why people find being around Christians awkward. Because light has shone in our hearts. It's not our light, it's not our intrinsic light. All that we have, any light that we have is borrowed light. It's from Christ. But people see, even in our imperfection, in our sinful life, a bit of that light, and it exposes their sinful hearts. This is why people might go off you when you say what you believe. Because they're frightened their sinful life will be exposed by the light. What about you? Will you come to the light this morning? As a believer, will you come again and bathe in it and soak in it afresh? And believer, remember, this time of year, he came to bring you into his light. And therefore, let 2017 be a year where you walk in his light. Ephesians 5, let's close on this verse. Paul loves to pick up this theme of light. I think he was really drawing out the applications. Here's application. For you were once in darkness. We were once in darkness, weren't we? We don't want to go back to that darkness, do we? For you are light in the Lord, as children of the light. For the fruit of the Spirit is in all goodness, righteousness, and truth, finding out what is acceptable to the Lord. Let's walk this year, coming year, in light. And I pray this Christmas time will be a time in which you can say, light has dawned in your heart, and that you have seen the glorious light of Jesus Christ, and you will endeavour to spend the whole of your life, starting from today and the rest of your days, walking in the light.